Capital Outlay Committee meeting on today, Tuesday, November the 28th. You got to review all the minutes from the 14th. Any comments? Do I hear a
Motion to approve the minutes of the 14th.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
B.
Pete.
Thank you, Peter.
Minutes are accepted. Chris, you want to do the 7-year plan and then the CPC? Or do you?
Yeah,
We voted everything for this.
yeah, you voted everything.
Can I have
What
one
I,
of those?
what I thought would make some sense, Mr. Chairman, is I went through yesterday with Sandy downstairs, and we looked at, there were 6 items that you guys didn't take up at your last meeting. I had her make copies, so you have a complete set of what CPC had. Maybe we just touch upon, go through those, and then, you know, I guess I'll offer 2 things. If you want me to do a simple overview of each one and then vote them, that's fine. If you want to have a department head come back and kind of do a presentation, that's fine by me too. So I don't really.
Well, I'm following the agenda, and the agenda goes, we look supposedly further review and potential votes of the 7-year plan, and then Roman numeral 4 is CPC.
Okay.
So,
So.
is there anything to this, to the plan itself that's
No,
changed?
no changes other than I did put in, obviously, the ones that you voted at the last meeting.
Okay,
those
so,
are now reflected in there.
okay, so let me just, I went to the bottom line, and the bottom line says the town administrator's recommendation is 36.5, and in FY19 it goes to 37.2. So is this the assumption of some CPC stuff, or is what makes the $500,000 difference?
Between the requests and the amount?
Your recommendation.
Yeah,
and
some of them.
the approval in the green column.
So the green column is the total requests, the dark blue column is the administrator, and then the COC is the lighter blue. You guys, obviously, I don't count out any of the 50,000 and less, so that number, your number is gonna be a little bit less than mine for
Okay,
that
so that's the
reason.
500?
Yeah, I think that's part of it.
Okay.
And then the other part is there are some that I could not fund within the CPC buckets, so they're not in there. And some adjustments to those CPC buckets.
Chris, you're assuming CPC, they haven't voted on any of this stuff.
Yeah, just to be very clear, especially where this is televised, I was asked specifically by CPC to see if, to give prioritization of the administration requests. And I thought that instead of just doing a 1 to 10, that didn't make sense to me, because the way CPC is laid out is you have basically 4 buckets. So I looked at the request based upon the buckets, and then what I do, I mean, this is what I've always done in this business, is you see how much resources you have, and then you see what the requests are, and then you see if they match up. So in a couple cases, they didn't match up the way that I would have wanted them to, or there was more requests than there was money, and then hard decisions had to be made about making reductions. So,
They know how much, excuse me, they know how much they have to spend this year?
yes,
Now,
yes.
how much?
It's right on your sheet,
We didn't get there yet.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what I'm,
2.7.
if you go to the agenda, Joe,
All right, I hear you.
we're still on the non-CPC stuff.
Yeah.
And so our vote, our past votes, Chris, equal or cover the 36.5?
Yeah.
Like your light blue column. I'm looking at your last sheet.
Yes, the last page.
No,
You're-
that's this.
you're- Yeah, so mine is the 36.
Right,
Yeah.
36.5
Yeah.
is what we
And then
voted.
The requests are 37,
Right,
and you guys are a little bit less. A large portion of that is the under
under 50.
the 50.
Okay,
Okay.
so we are set on all the
We're-
votes.
Yeah, we're good on, I
Okay.
think we were unanimous in terms
Yeah.
of.
Any questions on that?
recommendation to-
Joe, you're
No.
good? Chris?
Fine.
Okay.
Thank
Okay, so while we're on that, And before we jump on CPC, Chris brought up an issue that he was concerned about, and he wrote me a note. Why don't you bring it up, Chris?
Chris, I'm concerned when people compare last year's capital plan with this year's.
Mhm.
Last year it was 20 million and change.
I'm trying to think of, we had multiple versions, so it depends upon what we presented to town meeting.
Yeah,
Mhm.
town meeting. And we're going up to 37 and change this year. To me, that is a huge jump, and I understand the source of that. Wastewater and fire station being the leaders. How do you think that's going to be perceived by the voters? And how are we going to effectively explain that significant jump?
So I don't have that in front of me, but I think one of the things that, and I'm trying to think of the version that we did put in front of town meeting last year. I mean, you have a $20 million swing just because when the plan was originally designed, it had $34 million for wastewater. And a decision was made by the selectmen to take 12 million and fund it last year and shift that 20 million, 22 million into this year. So, you know, there was a decision made by people I work for that I have to be responsive to not seek the full 34 million and do it over two. So I think part of the answer is gonna be that a large portion of that change. But I also think the nature of the capital plan, you know, whatever doesn't get funded last year, you know, does generally defer to the next year. The need is still there.
Let me interrupt here too, because last year, you're talking about $20 million, but 19 was forecasted at 35 million. It was forecasted at 35. So.
Came in at 37.
So, and also, last year, the forecast for 19, Firehouse was 4 million. Okay, so there's a marked difference. I'm just looking at wastewater. Was it, you have it circled, $20 million more, and it was 11 million last year. It's 23 million this year, it's 12. 4 and the 6 is 14 million.
Right.
14 million on top of the 20 million puts you at the 34 million already. And we're not even considering any of the other construction projects.
Right. I think one of the things, maybe to the point, you know, that there was a comment made at town meeting, you know, are we being deliberate? Are things in the plan staying, or are things just being added in? You know, probably the other thing that we made a change, I don't know if last year, maybe I did last year, included in CPC elements into it, but I think I did it as a separate chart.
Yeah, the numbers that we're talking, and Chris and I were emailing about, is 20 million versus today's 36.
36 million.
But it was estimated at 34 last year, so it isn't a total. If you looked at this, then we're sort of in the ballpark.
Okay.
The question, or how I replied to you is, it's still the question of appetite by the taxpayer. Do you want a new firehouse? Yes or no? The wastewater, they voted for it.
Right.
So the question is now, the rubber meets the road, I'm assuming, in terms of dollars.
But
Yeah, I'll look at that, just what did town meeting see last year versus this
20
year,
million.
and make sure that we can articulate that.
let me just ask
Somebody will ask him.
Someone will ask.
kind of a simpleton's question, though. We've got 22 million FY19 for wastewater.
Yes.
We're not going to spend 22 million in 19. That is going to be funded
Yeah.
over.
Yeah, I
That's
think what we did last year
Very good
is
point.
we provided the debt chart, and I got to follow up with Carol, I know that she
Yeah,
asked for that
okay.
information. So $22 million will obviously be borrowed and then paid out over 30 years. And that will be part of that average $400 impact on the tax bill over the sequence of events. In terms of, I think, where I at least was thinking is people are gonna say, well, where are you with your spending on the 12 million that you approved last year?
Right.
So, the answer to that is we have $2 million for the design, which is underway, and that design should be done prior to town meeting. So we have that piece.
Have something to show for it.
We'll have something to show. The other piece is that we did make our first payment to the town of Chatham at 2.5, if memory serves, maybe a little bit north of that. But we made the $2.5 million payment. The next payments aren't due until we hit certain thresholds. So that, we knew that was gonna be a delayed process. And then really the last one is the Cold Brook project. And that one, we haven't spent a lot of money. We've spent a little bit on consulting to make sure that we could partner up. So all three elements have been either implemented or are engaged to be implemented and underway. Cold Brook is a little further behind than I would like, to be perfectly honest.
I would like to see
We have
an
that.
update of
We will.
this,
Yeah, and that's what we asked for last week.
okay?
We will.
When you plug in the fire station and the 22 million
Right.
Wastewater, how is that affecting the individual homeowner tax impact?
Yep. We have that.
Yep.
We're in the
One sec.
process of developing it.
I think it's critical, and Chris brought it up in a roundabout way, and we talked about it last year in a roundabout way. We look at these massive numbers, and it's like, it's like buying a house. And in 1 year, let's say it's Harwich, you pay $350,000 for a house. Well, in essence, you're getting a house for $350,000, but you're not putting $350,000 in. So we're putting $22 million buying a wastewater facility, plant, treatment, whatever, system.
System, not a
Okay.
plant,
Yeah, we're buying the system, the process for 22 million. Well, we're not getting it in 1 year, we're paying for it over time. So it's the same.
So
We
what
do
we're
have
saying,
we'll have the tech school in there too. The tech school is
That's
a
right.
relevant piece,
so the 22 million that we're gonna vote this year
yes.
is the big hit.
It's the big hit, yes.
And now we're not gonna have another big hit for,
Until 2024.
okay.
I'll let you know when that happens.
Okay, but I mean, I think we need to let the taxpayers know that this isn't gonna happen every year, that
Absolutely,
we're at the 22 million, and then we can coast till we get to the next one.
yes.
Okay.
But I think someone has to be prepared, and I'm sure it's Chris, or this committee, has to be prepared to speak to the fact at town meeting, 22 million. What is that number?
And why?
And why? What's the 22 million in layman's terms? And I think one of the layman's process uses the effect on the individual household.
Yeah, one of the things that we have to also work on, I have a meeting later on this week, and we need to definitely get this engaged. Once they're finished with the survey, then we'll know that there's gonna be 5 or 6 pump stations, 8 miles of pipe. So I think once we start putting some numbers in, people will kind of get the sense that, 8 miles of sewer line and 5 or 6 pump stations are gonna cost, in the neighborhood of $20 million. But we owe that. We have a contract to do that work with CDM to update those pamphlets that we did last year and get those out for folks.
I think it's more important not the numbers, but what are you buying for the
Right.
22 million?
This is the pipes in the
How do you,
ground this time.
right, how do you project those dollars into physical terms, like pipe, of which it's 8 miles,
8 miles of
pumping
pipe.
stations, of which there are 5 at 400,000 a piece, whatever the hell it is. But I think that's the way now you start putting concrete.
Yes.
Yes, Pete?
This may be come out in the survey they're doing, but town meeting is, 5 months from now? People are gonna want to know, are they gonna sewer my street?
It's too early.
It
Well,
is.
we have, basically, if you look at the literature that we have now, that shows out, that has the colored areas, Those areas that are in phase two, with some minor exceptions, are basically what's gonna be done. And I've tried to say this, and certainly if we're televised, it's another good opportunity. There are some elements where we may have picked another street that's adjacent because we can do that by gravity. And we may have eliminated a street because it would be a pump station
Yep.
or to have people with grinders. But, 95% of what we already have out there is what the plan is.
Okay.
So the real question that I think the survey work is gonna answer is, am I gonna have to buy a grinder pump? Or am I gonna be on a low-pressure system for my individual home, and how do I connect up? And some of the material we had, if it's a gravity, if you're 50 feet off the frontage of the house to the street, 50 feet, and it's gravity, it's probably gonna be one of the simpler connections. So that will probably be closer to $3,000, 3 to 5. If you have a finished basement, you wanna make sure you rerun your pipe and have two connections, and you're kinda complex, and you need a grinder pump, you're probably gonna be closer to 10. And I think that's what this survey work is gonna do, is gonna say, based upon where the pipe is in the street to where your elevation is in your house, will give us some indication as to whether we can do it by gravity.
Is there any way to put, for town meeting, a street map?
Yeah, we will. That survey work is still underway. I was hoping that they would have it done in December. They're now talking about beginning of January before that survey work is done.
Certainly before town meeting.
Certainly before town meeting.
That's us?
Yeah. That's phase two.
Okay. So let's say we are finished with the recommendations. Pete, we voted last week, so everything is in. And so now we're gonna be looking at the CPC stuff. And that's the packet.
Yes. Yeah, there were, in total, there were 6 applications that you guys did take under consideration some. So, and you did vote some, so I excluded those from the material. If you want additional material, I'm more than happy to provide that.
And you can give us the,
But just, yeah, just to get down the list here of, I'll try to do these in order too.
but you can give us the,
We did the community center, has the record storage vault.
I was gonna say, you can give us the Cliff Notes version of,
So the Cliff Note version is basically that, the idea is we want to cull through the records here at the basement of Town Hall. The basement of Town Hall is, if you want to think of a dungeon-like, it's kind of dungeon-like, so it has a lot of moisture issues. And for record storage and retention of records, that's not what you want to do. What this calls for is to create a section in the basement. Now, when I say basement, our basement is probably 7 feet high. The basement in the community center is probably 12 or 13 feet high, and it has more opportunity to do temperature, put in humidity controls and things of that nature. So the 62,000 that's being sought for that is to do that work in the basement. So there's 2 parts to that project. One is to cull through the records. There's no reason to store records that there's 3 versions of it or 3 copies of it. So we would have a company go through, cull the record, and then store it in a store it in a more safer location and humidity-controlled location to be able to preserve the record for a longer period of time. That's
You
what the
frame- would
62,000
you
does.
Mr. Chairman?
go ahead.
Would you frame that up in the basement?
Yes.
Where you're gonna store it?
Yes.
Okay. Right now, there's all kinds of shit down there.
Okay, you're on TV.
You're on TV.
You're on
watch
TV.
Do we vote these?
No, I'm trying to, is that the one that's project manager's Carolyn?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And that, if you can give us dollars, is 62,000?
Yes, my chart is up to date on that. $62,028 is what she has for the
Okay,
estimate.
so that's, let's prioritize, so we sort of know that one's 62.
And again, all these things that I recommend, if I recommend it and I have it in my column, then there's sufficient funds. If we do not have sufficient funds to do everything.
Okay, where are you on your sheets?
So in this case, under first page, community center, last item,
The last item.
Okay.
it's CPC historic, 62. On the historic ones, that was easy. There was about 600,000 in available funds and 500,000 in requests.
Okay, so you are recommending that one?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Do you want me to just keep going overview, or did you want to vote as you?
No, that's fine. What I want to do, how many are there?
There's 6 in total.
Let's review the
Review
six,
the
and
six,
then
okay.
we'll be able to pick it out.
The next item that I have on the list, just alphabetically, is conservation. This is the 200,000 for Cornelius Pond. Let me see.
I got 250. Nantucket.
Real estate and open space
Yeah,
was the
is that the one?
submission,
Yep.
so the one that.
There's two, 25 and 175.
Yeah, but I'm looking at the
So
paperwork.
in terms of this one, the Harwich Conservation Trust is in the process of acquiring, I think it's a 15-acre site. I may have my acres wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, 15-acre site. Also known as Eldridge Pond. On the maps, I believe it says Cornelius Pond. They are going to go in and acquire the property at the value that they determine for the land itself. In this case, what the request is of the town, very similar to what we did up at, the name flew out of my head, Marini property, up off of Muddy Creek area. So same theory, if you would. So HCT goes and acquires the property, and then to help them acquire the property, we acquire a conservation restriction over it. So the property can't be used to develop houses or anything of that nature. And then we will also, I believe, apply for a grant. There's a state land grant. We did receive the state land grant money for the Marini property. The state's not always enamored with giving the same town money every single year, but the request is a little bit less. I think last time it was 400,000. But this is specifically just for the conservation restriction. The estimated cost of that is 200,000. There was not enough money in the CPC, so oh no, I'll take that back. There was money in CPC, so I took money out of open space and then undesignated. So I did use the buckets to their maximum potential. I think if it's taxpayer money, it only makes sense that that taxpayer money be used and invested in what it was intended for originally, which in this case was the purchase of open space.
Okay, that's good. Next.
The next one is, on the chart is on Saquatucket Harbor.
Okay.
This one is the
Chris, did
small.
you want to do the Judah Eldridge property?
I think they already voted Judah.
Oh, that's right,
Eldridge.
I'm sorry, they
That's
did.
okay. So on the harbor master, obviously, 'cause I sit through all these meetings, but the Board of Selectmen the other night did approve the construction project for Saquatucket Harbor. Obviously, the bid environment that we've been in, the economy is strong, building is going well, which is good in some ways. It's kind of bad when you're in the market trying to get contractors to come and do work. So the project is pretty tight. In this one, the harbor master had put in for $250,000 towards that project, and specifically, he kind of earmarked that money to the pedestrian accessibility. That project has really 3 major components to it: harbor master's office, the maintenance shed, the maintenance garage, and then the boardwalk. So the boardwalk system is a system that will allow for handicapped folks or people, women with strollers and things of that nature, to traverse the site and go to the water side, where the water side will already have a handicap access ability on the docks. So that's part of the water side. This brings people to that. I did not recommend funding for this, only because there was not enough money. And the harbor master has been very proficient. And in this case, he has applied for 3 grants to try to supplement. So my fondest hope is that we land one of those 3 grants, and we don't have to do them. We don't have to do
Okay,
that.
so there's no recommendation?
No.
So we're good. That's not votable for us, or we don't have to support it right now. Just a matter of format, is there like a pro forma form that the departments use? Because they're all asking the same, they're all giving the same information, but different formats.
Yeah, I think they sent it out, it is their form. I think it does, when people put it on their system, it looks a little different.
Okay. So is this affordable housing?
Actually, the next one,
Okay.
just alphabetically, did we vote already on the library piece?
No.
Sugar, I'm sorry, I skipped over that. The library piece is I had it under facility maintenance. On the Brooks Free Library, there is a little bit of confusion. I certainly try not to add to the confusion if I can help it. I did realize that when I spoke the other night on this, I did misspeak a little bit. There was an appropriation made for $540,000 to do preservation on the library. Obviously, I think you guys are very much aware that the library just doesn't need to be painted, it needs to be stripped and then preserved and have the raw wood, so that way it can now be applied, the new paint could be applied. We did go out to bid. In the initial bid, we did it all as one package. It came in above the budget of $540,000, so we did not have sufficient funds to do it. We went back out a second time and broke the project into 3 pieces. To do the front of the building, the Main Street side, the back of the building, and the side of the building. That budget came in higher than the original one to do the 3 components. So in conversation with Sean Libby, our facility maintenance, he believes that there's, I think it's $475,000 that is left in the appropriation, plus the $300,000, that should be kind of an average of the bids that we've already received. And that should be a number that we hope would cover the full cost of the project. So the long and the short of it is the amount and the bid environment that we're in, there was not sufficient funds to do the project at what was appropriated last year.
Well, I'm confused. We have money appropriated for this already?
Right.
How much?
This would be a supplemental appropriated. 540 was originally appropriated.
So it's there.
475
It's
left.
sitting in an account,
Yes,
and there's 475 left.
475 left.
And
And
we're
you're
asking,
looking for 300 more.
And we're asking for 300 more.
and we're asking for 300,000 more.
So it'd be 775 is closer to the total.
I just think of sitting
Joe,
back.
Joe,
Excuse me.
okay. The 300,000, are you recommending it or not?
Yes.
You are.
I'm recommending that actually is from historic,
It's under maintenance?
under
It's on the
CPC
first
historic.
page.
Yeah, actually, it was under
Under-
facility maintenance,
Okay.
DPW.
Under facility maintenance,
Okay. So that's under, okay, so that 300 there, under historic.
Yes,
Is there a balance in historic to cover it?
yes.
Joe, what do you got? Okay. We have to vote on that one.
And then, let me see, 2 left. right? The next one, no, actually, I'll take that back. On the planning department, it's the housing. We look to establish a Harwich Affordable Housing Trust, and also under that, hire a part-time housing coordinator. There was $500,000 was the original request. Looking at the other items related to housing has about $700,000 in that bucket. So not a lot has been spent, quite honestly, over the last probably 4 or 5 years on housing. So what I did in this case is I did adjust my number to 295. What this does, in a nutshell, is it creates a organization within the town of Harwich that will be a trust. And what that trust will do is it will have a specific charge to acquire property or do things related to affordable housing. So if a property comes on the market right now and someone wants to potentially acquire that, right now we have to call a special town meeting, we have to identify the funding source, we have to go to town meeting and get it. It's a pretty cumbersome process for us to try to get into that world and get into being in competition, if you would, for those resources. In this case, the money would already be appropriated. The trust would actually have the fiduciary responsibility to acquire property for that specific purpose. It cannot use this money for anything else other than affordable housing. So it's a tool that's been used pretty successfully in other towns. I know Chatham has it. I think probably the better model that has been in use actively has been the town of Yarmouth, so we're modeled on Yarmouth.
Who's on the planning board?
I am.
Are you guys are aware of this stuff, sir?
Yes,
Are you in favor? Where
I
does
think I
your,
can say that we are.
you are?
Yeah, we did do a presentation to the Housing Authority, and we got a nod from them that they liked the concept. And then who
Housing
else?
committee?
And then the Housing Committee,
And-
also, we have a letter of endorsement.
I'm not sure we voted,
Okay.
but it was presented to us through our now former planning director.
If I might, actually at the CPC meeting this Thursday, there's going to be this is coming up at their meeting, and a woman from the Mass Housing Partnership who specializes in housing trusts is actually going to be there to help explain how the housing trust itself works. So if you want to know a little bit more, either attend or watch it on TV when
Well,
that's.
I guess,
Those are televised.
I just have a question. Normally, what we've seen in the past is that there's some type of committee, like Brooks Library, it's the library. The 15 acres, it's the trust. And Joe, I'm assuming you guys are the champion on this? Is there a committee that's?
Yeah, I think it's probably the selectmen are kind of leading the charge on the affordable housing to see. I think historically, well, I shouldn't say historically, I've only been here 4 years. So as historic as 4 years can be, I think that by having volunteers kind of lead the effort, it's an awful lot to ask volunteers to really act as a developer and do a lot of coordination. So what Yarmouth has done is they have it as the administrator is on that board, a member of the Board of Selectmen, and then people that are in housing will participate in this. And I think the idea behind that is, you know, we could pick up the phone and have legal assistance from the town attorney, work on it. If there's financial information that we need, we have more resources within the town. I think that's what Yarmouth saw in their experience and what we're trying to duplicate here.
I think it's fair to say, Mr. Chairman, that this got going this year, Chris, because of the Habitat,
Yes.
in my opinion.
I think that that's a good
Kind
point.
of pushed it.
It really has kind of driven that, you know, the town per se has not really led the charge. We've left it to Habitat for the last, you know, number of years to be really the affordable housing advocate for the community.
So this is sort of like giving them a kitty, and if a house came up for auction
Yes.
and they were interested in it, they would have the money available to act on it, and I think that would be a good thing,
I do too.
yeah.
I honestly do.
Sort of like a revolving fund? Or an-
I mean, it's dedicated funds, so it just gives you the availability to get into, you know, things that we probably would miss out. I mean, I know people call and they say, well, do you want to buy a piece of property tomorrow?
Who runs the trust?
It would be a board, it would be a board of trustees. So the administrator, selectmen, and then 3 people from the housing community would be involved
Well,
in
you've
it.
got the administrator, board of selectmen, but yet, like
One member of the
planning board?
of Selectmen. We actually could have a member of
It
the
just
planning
makes
board
sense,
on
I
it.
think.
Yeah.
You guys think so? I mean, I think every request has to have some type of
Advocate.
advocate. Certainly, you guys would be
Sure.
would be the obvious.
Something to think about.
The fire department, the fire building will be over and he'll be available. Okay, so that's 295. Okay, and then we have,
And then the
final one?
The last one, at least in my records here, is on Brooks Park Phase 5, the comprehensive lighting plan.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's been a tremendous amount of work done at Brooks Park, and I think they've done a good job doing that work. But it is, we had some folks come to the selectmen's meeting and say, it's pretty dark, and can we do something to try to improve the lighting situation? So this is an effort to do that.
How much is it?
Yeah, the amount was 300 and
333.
333,500, thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So, Chris, this isn't like for them to play under the lights or anything. This is just lighting all around Brooks
I
Park.
think it's lighting around Brooks Park.
How about lighting in the parking lot of Town Hall?
Yeah.
Would help, wouldn't
That
it?
doesn't count.
It's so
You know, I
dark.
had two of my staffers mention that to me last night, so
That
you
and
do
so-
need to look, it is pretty
That
dark
and this
out.
committee is very concerned about sidewalks.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. Many years.
Is that the 5, Chris?
That's
That's
six in
the
total.
six.
is what I-
Okay,
Okay.
so that we do not have to worry about the 250 for the harbor master. Okay? So, Chris, you basically, we're looking at, I'm gonna use round numbers, 6, a million, 1,062,000.
And maybe if you go to the last page, you see that little chart in the middle there, community preservation. What I'll do is I'll take out the administrative recommendations and put CPC in there when they make their final decisions. But there's $2.7 million available currently. The spending plan that I just laid out has $2.6 million of spending, so within budget. You can see when you do the categories, I spent out pretty much housing and open space. And then historic, because there weren't enough requests, there's still $99,000 in there.
Where do you get,
The very last page.
I understand, but I've got the 5 projects that you're recommending, and I'm coming up with 2,
The basement,
250.
the harbor, the library,
550,
Cornelius Pond, Housing Trust, and Brooks
850.
Park.
I'm coming out with $1.2 million, $1.1 million.
Well, that includes all the other ones too.
All the ones we didn't talk about.
The ones that we did, the ones you did last time.
No,
Are
no,
in.
no, I'm just talking about CPC.
And smaller projects.
The small under 50s.
So that's $1 million. I'm trying to add up your 5.
Yeah, no, I gotcha.
The 5 comes out to be about $1.2 million.
I didn't break it out that way.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well, I'm trying to say,
I
what
broke it out
what we
globally.
would agree with you with
Yes,
is a number of about $1.2 million.
yes.
Gentlemen, do you agree?
Yep.
Okay, so we're looking at, if I'm correct, $333,500 for Brooks Park, $295,000 for affordable housing, so that takes us to about around 640. 300 for Brooks, that takes us to almost $1 million. 62,000 for the basement, that's $1 million and change. And 200,000 for 15 acres, so we're $1.2 million.
$1.2 million. Yep.
So that's what we don't have to vote, but we're in agreement, support it. We should vote on it. Okay, so the 200,000 for the 15 acres,
So moved to approve.
Oh, wait, I gotta try and figure this out.
this is for 15 acres, Cornelius,
Under
also known
Cornelius
as
Pond, yep.
Yeah.
200
Eldridge
acres.
Pond Woodlands Project, 200 grand, 175 from unallocated, or-
Unallocated.
and then 25,000 from green,
Open
open
space.
space.
Second.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No, okay, so that's 5-0. That's good?
Just while you're on that first page, you want to do the basement construction?
Sure. I'm just looking at these. The basement is 62,000?
62,000.
Okay, well, do I hear anything? Give me one. 62,000.
Motion to approve the 62,000.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Excuse me.
You got that one? Okay? Which one do you want to go next?
The next one is under facility maintenance, DPW, the 300,000 for the library project.
Okay. Historic preservation of exterior of Brooks Free Library. I really, really like this one to move. Okay?
If we don't get it done.
I make a recommendation. that we-
I moved the 300.
Okay, second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Good. They're all reasonable if the funding is there. And I'll have a question after we vote. The affordable housing, which was, the project was requested at 500,000, and it's been almost cut in half to 295 for the Housing Trust Fund and part-time housing coordinator. Do I hear a motion?
Move the 295.
Second?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. And the final one is
Or recreation.
recreation, $333,500. Where's it coming out of?
This one, I call it recreation, it's out of undesignated.
Okay. 333,500. Do I hear anything?
Motion to approve.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Chris, one question. If I were to take all the requests that are CPC that you recommended,
Yes.
how much is that?
It's on there, 2.6.
Okay, and how much is in CPC funds available?
2.7.
So they'd still have a balance?
Yes, but the balance is in, they had, in the original pot for historic, they had 561,
Yeah.
and they only got 461 in requests. So I well, I shouldn't say, in terms of my recommendation, I can't take historic and apply it to open
Right.
space. So it's
But
stuck.
when do they get their allocation?
The new chairman has decided, which I think this makes sense, the previous chairman decided that they were gonna take 1 year and have that money from a previous year, so the money's in the bank and is held, and then spend it basically a year later. And the new chairman has said, we should probably spend money once we receive it and have it, so it's an actual receivable. So we are having an impact of doing that. We will have a little bit more money available this year than perhaps other years, and then that will true itself up. I mean, it's still gonna be basically 4 quarters of tax money that we'll get, and then we get 1 allocation from the Commonwealth for their contribution of the matching funds. So 5 allocations in total.
And what is the dollar amount that we would,
Well, I think that
Round figure.
last year it was 400,000.
okay?
I'm a little bit concerned that it's one pool of money, and it depends on how many communities have signed up for CPC, or CPA funding, and the city of Boston has signed up. And at least in my experience, the city of Boston tends to be a huge sucking machine of money. So I would think that, it would be unrealistic to assume 400,000 again, but certainly probably 200,000 or 300,000.
To us or to the Commonwealth?
For our portion.
For Harwich?
Yeah, last year we received 400,000, and I would anticipate that probably 200 or 300, something less. Because other cities and towns did sign up too, besides the city of Boston.
Now, CPC still has to meet and vote those.
Yeah, on CPC, over the next probably 3 to 4 weeks, they are having the different groups come in and present, similar to what I was just doing tonight, except the individual applicants are coming in. I know I'm going in 2 different meetings. And then I think they're planning right now to vote in January. I mean, I would love to, I'll update these numbers, and, I would love to share this with them. I mean, this chart that you just have, I shared with them on focusing mostly on this, just the CPC pieces of it. But, I like to share that with them and say, look, other reasonable people are seeing this and agree that these requests make sense.
I guess that was my next question. Are you gonna share with them that we voted on these 5 and it was,
It's a public meeting.
it doesn't mean anything, but
Well,
They can watch it on TV.
I do think it means something, though. I mean, personally, I think that you guys, as a capital outlay committee, you're supposed to vet, how the organization's updating itself and how it's changing. And does it make sense what we're doing? And does it make sense at how much money we're doing? So, why is that not valuable? I guess is the question
I think
would
it's
ask.
critical. I think it's critical to understand, and I think to have, like, representation from your group to support. And I know historically we did it for the library a year and a half ago, where we went and supported the request. I think it's critical for people to understand that our normal mode of operation, or what we have to go through the budgeting cycle, we have to take some hits. And the hits are the firehouse, for instance, Cape Cod Tech, for instance, wastewater, for instance, Monomoy High School, for instance. We have to take the hits. This stuff that we're looking at here are the things that there are funds available, But in essence, we can't control the allocation of those funds. This committee can't.
Right.
All we can do is recommend it, and I think we add value by saying we recommend that if that money is available, it should be spent in that manner. And I think that's where, if you're watching this or whatever the conversation is, we've never had the opportunity, nor were we requested or asked to participate in what makes sense when a committee or a department asks for something, and I'm gonna say under the norm or the operating budget or the capital budget, can't afford it. If we, for instance, the library, if those CPC funds were not available and we couldn't recommend it, I think we'd have a tough time
We would.
internally trying to say where we were gonna get these monies to do that, when in fact, there's a pot of money sort of sitting there that could be used if it were approved for something like that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just remind the town administrator that although the chairmanship has changed on that committee, the rest of those folks are the same folks who were on there all along.
There's some new ones.
There's no doubt that there'll be a little bit of uphill struggle. I would just certainly hope, and since this is televised, that you get into government because taxpayers give money for the purpose that CPC has. So they want to see something happen with housing. Housing is a great example, 740,000. The allocation is roughly $140,000 to $150,000 a year. So that means no serious effort really has been made in housing in 5 years. And if they can't spend the money themselves, they need to work with people in the community or work within the organization to see, can we put that money to work for the intended purpose that the residents are being taxed on each year?
Well,
And why is it being held year after year?
and I think the residents have to understand, and the taxpayer has to understand, is they're paying these taxes, and those are tax dollars that are sitting there. Secondly, is if the money could be spent, I'm assuming, I don't sit on the committee, so I'm just sort of speaking here, but I don't think, is there a buffer, is there a threshold that they must maintain a minimum balance?
Nope.
So the issue, like you say, if there's $750,000 sitting in some bucket called housing or whatever it's called, and it hasn't been spent, the question I would ask as a layman is, why? Why? If the need in the community, certainly there's a community need for that money to be spent, for the essence of the money to be spent.
Absolutely.
Okay, the essence of housing to be spent. Why hasn't it been spent? Again, if there's no legal threshold that has to be met, like 10% or 50% or a real number,
Well, we do allocate when the money comes in.
it's allocated out.
10% has to go into that bucket.
I understand that, but I'm
Yeah.
saying that bucket doesn't have, that bucket could shrink literally to zero because it's gonna be funded next year
Correct,
by a 10% factor.
correct.
It's gonna get a deposit. And the question is, the withdrawals coming out of it can be greater than what the deposit's gonna be.
Right.
Because you've got a gross balance there. So anyway, I think we understand it, and I think that the taxpayers should understand it, it's our money. I mean, it's the
I do
taxpayer.
want to, I'm going to get myself in so much trouble saying all this stuff, but I'm just going to say it. I think the enemy of success is when people expect perfection. And, I would ask the CPC, and I probably will say this directly to them too, that you're not going to get every proposal is going to be perfect. Everything is not going to have every single answer that you want. But again, if we don't take an action, we get no results. And I get a little frustrated because, I get from their perspective, but you can get mired down in the past, and you look at the housing authority, and I don't mean to pick on the housing authority, they certainly have tried, but they got 2 allocations to do stuff with housing, one in 2008 and one in 2012. And they only recently spent that 2008 money. So almost 10 years in the making to spend it. And when I go before them, I mean, I'm a lot of things. The one thing I think I do pretty well is if I say I'm gonna do something and produce results, then we'll produce results. And, you know, I think that's what I get into government for. If we're gonna have a housing initiative and do something with housing, then give it to an entity that's gonna get something done.
And,
I'm off my soapbox.
no, I couldn't agree with
No,
you.
I
I couldn't agree
agree.
with you more, and I think the whole committee feels that way. I think you have a very concerned finance committee that's dealing with this from an operational yearly basis. And then you have the longer-term financial view, the capital outlay committee, okay? And a lot of this stuff that seems to impact on a yearly basis may be from an operational standpoint, but certainly it's on the capital plan because it's longer term. So I don't want to get people confused. Why aren't the finance committee people? They can certainly support it too, okay? And I would ask them to do that. They've done a fine job in the past. I think that we should, if we have to, know when these meetings are happening. If you want to send us a note,
Yes, we can do
Charlene,
that.
if you want to send us a note, and if we have time, we should go and tell them that we've supported, we voted for it. And I think the meeting should, if you're at the meeting, you should let them know that the capital outlay committee has supported.
Yeah, with your permission, I'll just
Yeah.
update this and say, here's my recommendations and,
Yep.
and your
And we've had a
agree.
full discussion on it. It's not the fact that we've just taken a vote.
Just to hit a rubber stamp, we
Yeah.
talked about it.
Okay. So we are done in terms of CPC, in terms of requests, in terms of support. We did 5 out of 6. We've done the capital plan. I think Charlene, is it December 15th?
No,
I was just trying to think of that.
11th.
December 11th is when the capital plan has to formally be submitted to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay. Do you do that? Do we do that?
I think that should be a joint effort.
Okay, so we'll do it together?
Yeah.
Okay. December the 11th. I don't think we need to meet on the 5th.
okay.
That's kind of silly.
Yep.
No 5th. December 11th, which is a Monday.
Yes.
Yes.
We'll be there. December the 11th. If you would, if you can, if you could have hard copies of your final product, just tell us,
The summary, absolutely.
tell us a week before.
Yep.
So we can stop by and pick it up if you're interested in having it for, I need it to look at it, and I can't print this. You know, I mean,
I have
Yeah,
trouble
no,
printing
I-
it too.
Yeah, I can't.
I get yelled at for using the color copier too much, but color makes a difference.
Well, I think it's the length. I don't have, I've got one of those $7,
Do it on the
I've got a $7 printer, and it's, I can print on little postcards.
We will try, just now that, with Carol here, on that chart, did we have any update from the folks from the finance about when that chart's coming on the tax impact?
I have the graph, and I have been working on tax impacts today.
So what I'll try to do is, as quickly as we're able to get that done, we'll incorporate that information so people will see what the tax ramifications of some of these
Okay,
things
if we could have that,
are. I'll send
tax
that out when I send out the
impact
updated one
document.
of these.
yeah, if you send that an updated one, we're assuming that we can come here and get it, we'll have it in print.
You'll have the same version in print. I'll do it once.
We could have it like next week.
Yeah, I'm hoping, this won't take me long to do, so I should have it out easily by the end of the week. I just, tax-wise, yeah, okay, so end of the week we'll have it out.
I just want to make sure that we're in sync by saying that, and you and I can talk,
Mhm.
that in essence, we had requests of $38 million,
Right.
and we've recommended 34 million, of which X million CPC, X million, firehouse, X million, whatever. So that, I think to answer Chris's question at the beginning is, how do you justify these big hits? And the big hit is 22 million, the big hit is Joe with 6 million, right?
Yep.
So you're talking 28 million on 38 million or 36 million. Now you're talking,
See, I think it's a, when I do like multiple versions of this, there's probably like already 10 versions of this thing.
yeah,
And I know last year, I think we had the Lower County Road project, $4.5 million. And we had that on last year. We've now shifted that from 19 to 20.
Forward, yeah.
So, there's $4 million that has migrated over time to now be more appropriately slotted in 20. So there's an awful lot of moving pieces, so I
Well,
think
no, it's-
we'll hit some of the highlights. to
but I think
make
it's
sure
critical
that-
that we understand that, and we can talk about it, because at town meeting, they're saying that we're not doing a good job by identifying future expenditures, yet we are, because we're moving them. They're not staying where we had put them originally.
I
And
agree
I think,
100%.
the capital outlay godfather would have said that they are placeholders, and that's where they belong. So I don't think I think we're right on target.
Mhm.
I mean, you can't be any more correct by saying, okay, then, we thought about it, doesn't belong there, it goes somewhere else.
We can't afford it this year, is what
We
we're
can't,
saying.
yeah,
Can't afford it this year,
Right.
that's right.
It doesn't just fall off.
Not that it's not a good idea.
Oh, yeah, it's a great idea.
But you can only do what you can afford.
Right.
Okay, so I hope we all can come to the meeting on the 11th. That's the Board of Selectmen, and that's the Town Administrator, and I think we presented, I think the Finance Committee.
It's usually a joint meeting between.
They're on the agenda.
Yeah, it's the
Usually
Finance
joint.
Committee, it's FinCom, and it's the Town Administrator and us offering up the capital plan. And I think that the critical piece also is that we say that capital plan, is that the one that goes into print? No.
Usually if there's any tweaks
Right.
between now, but essentially it's 95% what you
Right.
see is what you
Okay.
get in the plan.
Okay, guys. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
So moved.
So moved.
Aye.
Que pasa?